Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. You know, Billy, every year we have requests about wildflowers, whether it's summer, spring, fall, so we are honoring that request.
We are so blessed to have a reoccurring guest that is such a good friend to the program and an outstanding county extension agent. Mr. Eric Comley is going to be with us talking about these fall wildflowers. And our viewers know that Eric is a wildflower expert, along with being a 4-H agent in Garrett County. But we're so excited to have Eric on with us. And then we also have our resident forest health specialist, Dr. Ellen Crocker, going to be talking about bacterial leaf scourge. So this may be something you might be seeing, around this time of year. So we'll have Dr. Crocker kind of explaining that, but we're delighted to have you all with us. If you have any questions or comments for our presenters, please let us know via the chat function if you're with us via Zoom. And if you're on YouTube or you're a podcast listener, we'd love to hear from you via email, forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we can respond that way. But Renee, glad to be with you on this kind of soggy day here in Lexington.
I don't know whether or not that'll help the fall color, though. Will it, for getting this rain for a week? I don't know.
We need some moisture, but we also need some good temperatures to kind of play with us too. So
that's true. Well, next week I think the high is only supposed to be up in like 76 or 74, so that would be good.
Yeah, good sunny days, it'll be good. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So, I know you gave a long list of things that Eric does, but he also is an awesome photographer.
Yeah.
And so, Eric, if you want to turn your camera on, this is something that we are, he's always showing us these awesome photographs. And that's one thing that people are always loving about your presentations, Eric. Welcome to the show again. We appreciate you being on.
Always love having you.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I sure do appreciate it. This is, I guess I'll go ahead and get started. If that's all right with you all, I'll get started.
Yeah, hey, we want all the Eric Comley we can get, so yeah.
Exactly.
You are one of the few then. Hold on one second and I'll share.
You got good stuff though, we know that.
So thank you all for having me. Once again, my name is Eric Comley. I'm the Garrett County 4-H Youth Development Agent. And we'll talk a little bit today about fall wildflowers. This is probably a pretty easy topic for you all to get into because a lot of what we're seeing right now is, this isn't really your get into the woods and be looking for wildflowers time, but this is mostly going to be your fields and your roadsides that you're going to be seeing a lot of floral display in. So we'll go ahead and get started, but this is, like it says there, get them while they are yellow. This is the season of yellow. The spring we'll have yellow lady slippers, and we'll have some other things that are very spring, some trilliums that are yellow, but this is when we see the bulk of all of our flowers, or not all of our, but a bulk of our flowers that are yellow. So fall plants, fall began. I'm going to, let me just reduce this real quick. Fall began on September 22nd, 2024 at 8:44 a.m. So this is one of those things where technically any flower that blooms or is in bloom at or after this time is a fall wildflower. So once we hit that, the fall equinox, and we have those transitional times, and even if we get into meteorological fall, anything that's in bloom at that time, we really consider summer and fall kind of those transitional plants. And so there are some true fall plants, and we'll talk a little bit about those. One that I don't even have on here, and would probably be more information would be coming from, I would imagine, somebody like Lori or Billy to talk a little bit about, but we'll talk about that one here in just a little bit. Fall native plants tend to last a little bit longer because they are a little bit more adapted to those natural fluctuations in temperature. And even after our first frost, we tend to still see some flowers that linger around, although that's kind of the beginning of when the season of everything is beginning to die back. And this is just a general reminder about all of those things that you learn in fourth grade. As light diminishes, photosynthetic processes, including the production of chlorophyll, slow or cease, and herbaceous plants die back to the ground. And so We'll, after that first frost, that's the time when we start to see things die back. But we'll also see that transition in plants that are transitioning from summer to fall. So color scheme and aster aplenty. So this is like we had talked about in the beginning. This is the season of yellows. The picture on the right, this is sneezeweed, which is fairly common in the summertime, but can also transition over into that fall time as well. There's a variety of other colors that we see. So it's not, you'll still see your ironweeds in farm fields. You'll still see some Joe Pye that will still be active out there. There's a variety of plants that will still be out there, but yellow tends to be the one that dominates everything right now. So with that yellow, that generally means that you're looking at something that's going to be from the aster family. So that's all of the different plants that I mentioned there, Helianthus and Biden species and Solidago, Rudbeckia. There's all kinds of others, Verbenzia, which we'll talk about. All of those plants are in that aster family, and so the asters really put on a show. Asters they rival the orchids as far as the largest family of plants in the world. Somewhere around 30,000 different asters that exist in the world, and it feels like in the fall that Kentucky has nearly all 30,000 of them because they really put on a fantastic display. Excellent pollinators. And so if you have a field with asters in them, either that be goldenrod or something else, this is kind of the last shot for a lot of our pollinators, especially our insects, to be able to move through and to get that kind of last meal to go into their winter season, and especially bees. If you're a person that keeps bees, you want them to have every opportunity they can to get out. Although my ag agent, my A&R agent, Jay Heppensberger, we keep bees at the office. And one of the things that he always tells me is that bees that go out and get goldenrod, when you process that honey off of it, it smells like wet socks. So I don't know if that's terribly appealing, but the asters are out there doing good work for us late into the season. So there's a few asters that are on this slide here, but there are some other plants, not necessarily asters. The one on the right-hand side is our pale impatiens pallida, which is our yellow touch-me-not. And it's a really common flower. We're kind of used to seeing that. The other one that we see more often, the Impatiens compensus, which is kind of an orangish color, but the yellow or the pale is a really beautiful flower. And all of these are things that you would typically find cup plant, black-eyed Susan. These are all things that you would typically find in field or roadsides during the fall season. So this, I wanted everybody. This is also the season for ragweed. I don't know if everybody can see that, but this is ragweed ambrosia artemisiafolia, and so this is the one that's causing everybody. If you have allergies right now, and I'm going to flip over to this slide. This is the one that I want everybody to recognize because this is the one that causes so many of our allergen issues right now. So if you're seeing this, just know that this is where it's coming from. It's not coming from goldenrod. Goldenrod is not one that, because of the pollen doesn't travel like the ambrosia or the ragweed. But everybody should pay attention to this one, because if you have this one around your house and you have people that are extremely susceptible to allergens, this is one that can cause a lot of problems. So it is also I'm pretty sure that this one is also in the aster family. And so asters, both good and bad, doing work for us during the fall season. So the one that really dominates right now, especially in Kentucky, this is the goldenrods, and there are 32 recognized species of goldenrod found in Kentucky. As you all know, our state flower is it's giant goldenrod. Everybody will just kind of commonplace say that our state flower is goldenrod, and then the question always becomes, well, which one? But so in 1926, they established that goldenrod was our giant goldenrod, Solidago gigantea, was going to be our state flower. And you can read right there that they argued that bluegrass was not representative of the entire state, and so they settled on goldenrod. Of course, I would have preferred that it had been something a little bit more unique. And we do have things that are unique, especially in the goldenrod family. We have one species that is endemic and globally rare, which is white-haired goldenrod, Solidago abopolosa. And then we also have one that it's federally endangered, but it's not endemic specifically to Kentucky. Populations have been found in both Ohio and Indiana. And then there's also a link there at the bottom of that slide. If you want to take a real quick screenshot of that, that's a really good article about some of the different goldenrods, especially Short's goldenrod in Kentucky. So, but I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is white-haired goldenrod. This is the one that is found in Kentucky, and it's endemic only to Kentucky and only in the Red River Gorge area. It grows behind the dip line, or the drip line. So if you imagine a cliff, and you know that we have a lot of rock overhangs and space underneath, it's one of the more popular places for people to try and get into and camp, especially in the event that there's going to be rain or something like that. People try and get under those rock overhangs. What happens to be the preferred habitat of our white-haired goldenrod, which is a endemic and federally and globally rare plant that's found in the Red River Gorge. So if you look at the photograph there, you'll notice that if you look along the stem, that pilose, or that extremely hairy stem, it looks like an old man's forearm. The density of hair that's on the stem. There's 90 populations that are known throughout the gorge area, and most of those are protected. There's one that's really famous, or not famous, but is accessible near the Nada Tunnel. If you're in the gorge area, people can walk up, but that one is specifically behind a barrier or behind a fence, hopefully to discourage people to go in and walk around amongst it, because you can not only just step it on the plants, but also compacting the soil and doing damage that way. But there are other populations throughout the gorge that are in undisclosed locations as well. And it's an absolutely beautiful plant. I mean, if you look at the flower there, if you look at that goldenrod and you look at that flower there, it doesn't look like what you would imagine a typical goldenrod to look like, but it's a really beautiful plant. And the fact that it's an endemic and only found here is very unique. So I would encourage anybody that if you happen to be in the gorge, especially in the fall season, for you to try and go and see. Just lay your eyes on it, because it's one of those things that, because it's so unique to Kentucky, we should appreciate. This is the one that I think should probably be our state flower, but I'm not a legislator and I don't make laws yet. So there are other plants. So this is swamp milkweed, which is Asclepias incarnata. And it's another one that's transitioning from summer to fall. A lot of our milkweeds are in that transitional period and going into seed. But these, the ones that hang on later into the summer and into the early part of fall, become really important for pollination and for butterfly eggs and larvae, and not just butterflies, but a variety of other pollinators as well. This one is cardinal flower, and this is one that we see late in the summer into fall. It loves wet feet, so it loves to be around creeks and streams and rivers. beautiful bright red flowers. So it's one that's going to stand out. And if you happen to be in a waterway and you see a red plant, generally this is what you're going to be looking at. And it's not named after cardinals like the bird, but it's named after Roman Catholic cardinals and their robes that they wore, and a member of the bellwort family. Another member of the bellwort family, this is great blue lobelia. This is a little bit more common, and I'm going to flip back and forth between the two because I want you to look at the similarities in the flowers. And this is one of those things. This is how they end up in families like this, is because of the similar characteristics. So you can see those three distinct separated lobes in the front, and then you can see that also here in great blue lobelia. Really just a beautiful flower. It's very, very common. You can find it just about everywhere that you're going to have a creek, river, or stream that's flowing. Even in some, I think my internet is doing something. So the it can be found just about anywhere though. This is another one. This is skullcap Scutellaria. We have a variety of species of these in Kentucky, and I won't talk too much on, but it is pretty common. And you can see the floral shape there. This one is perfect for especially long-tongued bees and hummingbirds and things like that, where they can actually get a tongue down into that tubular structure and be able to feed on that. This is Verbenzia. So this is also called yellow ironweed or wingstem. Once again, found in areas where kind of low bottomland woods, and just about every pollinator out there loves to stop at these in very general terms. So I'm talking about butterflies, bees, wasps, all of that stuff. But it's not one that is, this is one that's not browsed on by deer. So deer tend to leave this one alone, and it spreads rhizomatically, so through underground stems. So this is autumn coral root. This is we do have this is an orchid. This is probably the last standing orchid that we have. And so Coralorhiza odontorhiza, and it is very difficult to find. It's pretty common, or not common, but it probably exists more out there than we realize. But it's really difficult to find because of the coloration. If you look at the stem, if you look at the flowers right now, you can see that it has that same coloration as basically just the fall forest floor, and so that creates issues. I've only seen it one time, and it happened. It was one of those things that just happened to catch my eye, broke a pattern, and I was really fortunate to find it. This picture I think was taken in 2017, maybe. So it's been a while since I've been able to find it. I found the others, the spring coral roots, but the fall coral roots, no. It gets its nutrients through mycorrhizal fungal relationships, and all orchids uh, operate through those mycorrhizal fungal relationships, and they can be very specific to the very specific types of orchids that you find out there. So that's why when you find things like coral root or any other orchid, any of the 43 different species of orchids that we have in Kentucky, they should stay where they're at, because when you take them out of the ground, they lose that relationship, and sometimes they don't survive beyond that. There are no known pollinators, but of the two variations of the flower, one is when they're open, and the other one is when they're closed. The one that is open tends to be more likely to pollinate and do well, and so scientists believe, or ecologists believe, that there is a pollinator. They just don't know what it is yet. So if you're looking to get into a real quick graduate project, or you're just wanting to study something, if you can find a population of fall coral root or autumn coral root, and you want to figure out what its pollinator is, you might be doing some really great things for science. So does anybody have any questions? I apologize for the internet. I'm at Felton Beach Camp right now, and Renee and I were talking, but we can see the individual stones in the ring of Saturn, but I can't get internet signal in London, Kentucky. So um, I'm sometimes at a loss. But if anybody has any questions, I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'm more than happy to take any questions that you might have.
Well, that's awesome, Eric. I really enjoyed your presentation. I love seeing all the different colors of the flowers, and it just looks great. You could try turning your video back on if you want. I know you're having issues there.
Oh, Eric,
Um,
thank you for marshaling through on that. I do appreciate it.
I mean, it was just your audio
Right.
sometimes, but I mean, you could figure out what you were saying, so it worked out okay. But I thank you because I know you're busy right now. I'm like, I wish I would have known you had a thing you were doing, and I wouldn't have scheduled you for today. But I
He's
do
always
really,
busy though.
I
But
know, and I so appreciate you joining us today with that awesome presentation.
Yeah, well, thank you all for having me, and I'll get off of here, so maybe I won't be such a distraction. But if there are questions and people, if Billy, Renee, if you all will just send those to me, and I'll try and reach out to people as I have the opportunity.
all right.
All right, that sounds
Eric,
great.
thank you. Appreciate you, buddy. Good work.
Yeah.
Now go teach the children good stuff.
Yes,
I'll do my best.
All right.
that's
Thank you,
awesome.
Billy.
All
Thank
right,
you,
buddy.
Aaron.
Take care.
See
Always
you.
good seeing you.
Bye.
Oh, and it was good stuff, Renee.
It really was. It really was.
Oh,
There's so many out there too. And the thing about it is that gets me is that some of them I'm just like, oh, well, that's that. And that was the same flower. Oh, nope, it's not.
no.
But I'm not really good at, IDing these, but that's, he is. So it's
Very
amazing.
good. And Kentucky's so awesome, right? We've got so
Oh,
many
I know.
great plants. Yeah, it's really cool. Eric did a good job.
He
Really, really
really did. He really did. Speaking of,
doing a good job.
doing
Somebody
a
we
good
know
job,
always does a great job. Dr. Ellen Crocker
Ellen
in the
Crocker.
house.
Oh, great to be joining you all today.
Oh,
Thanks for inviting me on.
We
you're always
appreciate it.
welcome
So tell
here.
us a little bit about what I know you're talking about this, but it just to me it looked like, like the leaves are just it's turning fall and they're starting to just, look fallish, dead, how they do, but evidently that's not it.
Well, this year, we are having these, well, it doesn't feel like it this week, but drought conditions that are causing some early fall color. We're starting to enter into that natural senescence period where fall color is happening. But for about the past month, we've also been in a key period of time for leaf color for another reason, and that is a disease that impacts trees and causes leaves to turn brown, parts of the canopy to turn brown. And it's something that happens each year and tends to get a little worse on a given tree each year, eventually killing the tree. But now is kind of the key window for symptoms in that, because for the most part, your healthy trees are looking still pretty green, but trees with this disease might have turned brown early.
Okay.
And that is bacterial leaf scorch. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I know,
Well,
right?
I don't know that I'm saying looking forward to it, but yes, I'm looking forward to your presentation. How's that?
I
Yes, yes.
appreciate that, Renee. And this is one that I wanted to bring up this time of year just because I've gotten lots of questions on it. Maybe you've been seeing it around as well. Just because it is eye-catching, it really sticks out. A tree looks fine for the summer, and then all of a sudden it starts turning brown in late summer. And this is something that is way more common in our urban areas and landscape trees, the shade trees in your yard. Not that it couldn't also be causing problems in your woods in a forested setting, but something that's really common in those kind of landscape areas.
All right.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about bacterial leaf scorch.
Looking
Looking
forward
forward
to it.
to learning more. Awesome, Dr.
Great, great. So to start us out with, what is bacterial leaf scorch? You can see here the symptoms that I was talking about, the scorch on the leaves, scorching from the outside edges in. But as the name bacterial leaf scorch suggests, this is caused by a bacterium, Xylella fastidiosa. Even though you see the symptoms in the leaves and in the canopy of the tree, the problem that it's causing is in the vascular system of the tree. It's impacting the flow of water. Specifically, that bacterium grows in the tree's xylem, the tissues that are responsible for moving water up through the tree. So that bacterium is in there, it's clogging things up, and it's preventing the flow of water, which is effectively strangling the tree from the inside. And the symptoms that you see are what you'd expect from a tree under severe water stress. This could happen for a variety of reasons. I mean, we've been seeing some of this happening naturally due to the drought, but looks like what you could expect if you girdled that tree or, anything caused it to suddenly lose access to water. This bacteria is spread from tree to tree by small sap-sucking insects. There are lots and lots of things that will feed on trees and suck the sap of them, and typically we would never notice them. They're not something that necessarily is going to maybe kill that tree, and certainly not something that we can control. If you think about an oak tree, you're not going to really be able to stop every little thing that's feeding on it in the canopy. So lots of these little leaf hoppers, tree hoppers, spittlebugs might be moving this bacterium from tree to tree using their kind of piercing mouth parts that they use to penetrate that tree and suck the sap out of it. Might also be some hitchhikers in there, that bacterium moving around. So while I'd say the most often infected trees or trees that you see the symptoms in the most, this disease in, are going to be your red oaks, especially maybe your pin oaks. But you can see these symptoms in many other tree species, including maples and elms, sycamores, pecan, like you see. In fact, the bacterium that causes bacterial leaf scorch causes other diseases on hundreds of other plant species around the world, including some globally important ones, such as Pierce's disease of grapes. There's even a major situation in olive growing in Europe right now with this same disease. So just to kind of show you, this is what it might look like on ginkgo. You see those scorched edges from the outside in, or sweet gum or maple. All of these are going to have that same scorched symptom where the leaves are going to be scorched from the outside edges in, happening kind of later in the year. Now, these same things could be caused by other factors that would cut off the flow of water. This is just one of the diseases that's really popping up right now. So you may first see these symptoms in the late summer, and they're going to get worse over the fall. Tree typically leaves out in spring, totally normal, looks healthy through the summer, and then you'll get leaf browning that can come on pretty suddenly, typically coinciding with hot, dry weather. So here's the canopy of a tree. You can start to see, it's starting to look brown. And if you look at each one of those leaves, they kind of have that scorch from the outside edges in. This leaf browning scorch symptoms can look different on different species. Typically, it's got this look from the outside edges in, but this can kind of look different in different settings. Even on red oaks, it might look different in different trees, but it typically has this kind of pattern of disease. This is what it might look like on a white oak. You can see maybe a slightly different pattern, more of a halo going on there between the dead tissue and the healthy tissue. And typically these leaves are held on the tree for a little while, as well as dropping early. So another sign of bacterial leaf scorch, in addition to the symptoms in the canopy of the tree, would be if you're having to rake your tree, your oak tree, in September, when you normally would not have to, but there's lots of brown leaves there on the ground. So typically what you'll see in terms of this disease pattern in a given tree is that one or a few branches will be affected initially. So you can see in this tree, you've got this branch that has symptoms, and maybe each year you'll get a few more branches having symptoms and having a progressive decline over time. So while the rapid onset of those symptoms in the late summer or fall makes it look like it happened suddenly, actually what you're seeing is something that's been in that tree for a long time, and it's gradually getting worse year after year. It doesn't kill the tree rapidly. Each year you might see more decline, more dead branches until the tree is eventually dead. But it typically takes a few years, sometimes many, to progress and kill that tree little by little over time. But it can come on really suddenly each fall. Now, there are lots of other things that can cause this same general symptom of leaf scorch, leaves with those scorched edges moving from the outside in. For example, you can see winter leaf scorch on evergreens like holly when conditions are particularly cold and dry. Not what we're talking about here today, but the same kinds of symptoms. On the other end of the spectrum, you might see similar dead leaf patterns when trees experience severe drought or heat stress. And since this scorch is just the symptom that reflects a lack of water in trees, you might see something similar if you have any kind of sudden impact to the flow of water in that tree. So just to note that, lots of different things can cause that symptom. You really would want a lab-based diagnostic test to determine what you have going on. In addition, there's another disease that has been popping up just a little bit in our area called oak wilt that can sometimes have some similar symptoms. This is another pathogen that's going to impact the vascular system of the tree. And you can see it have some pretty similar leaf scorch symptoms, the canopy turning brown of the tree. However, this disease tends to kill trees pretty quickly. Within a season, you're going to have the canopy turn brown and that tree die, with those leaves kind of still held on that tree because it happens so suddenly. Versus bacterial leaf scorch, which tends to move much more slowly, trees getting a little worse each year, not something that typically kills the entire tree in one season. Because of that, oak wilt is a bigger concern when it does appear, and there are steps that should be taken to reduce its spread and remove it locally if you have oak wilt that probably don't need to be done with bacterial leaf scorch. While bacterial leaf scorch will kill trees over time, oak wilt happens a lot faster and can be more aggressive. In addition, we have less oak wilt in this area. So, bacterial leaf scorch is extremely common. If you're seeing oak wilt, if you're seeing something like this, I'd really encourage you to reach out to your county agent, try to figure out what it is, like a really sudden tree death. Because if you do have oak wilt, you want to take some steps for that. And you would want to have a diagnostic lab test to be completely sure what you've got. So when it comes to management of bacterial leaf scorch, unfortunately, there's no cure. Trees that are infected will continue to decline little by little over time until they are killed. And what you're going to see with that is probably trees that are losing branches little by little, start to have this really kind of unhealthy look, maybe requiring more pruning as they lose those branches to keep conditions safe. Making sure that pruning is properly done so that the tree can effectively seal off those wounds and at least try to extend its life and your enjoyment of that tree. While it will kill it over time, this can take many years. And how long it takes is somewhat related to how healthy your tree is, what else is going on with it. There are lots of things that can cause decline in trees like this, and it's hard to pull them out of decline once they're in it, but you can prolong the health of that tree. So other things that you can do that could greatly extend the life of trees would be anything that promotes its health and reduces the likelihood of infection by keeping those trees healthy longer. So things like watering, especially during a drought, might seem minor, but can really assist your tree. And, one thing that I commonly run into is, I'm not talking about like a little sprinkle with a hose every day. Trees like to be watered deeply, but not have their soils be saturated. So making sure that that watering is, what the tree needs and going to best promote its health versus inadvertently maybe making things worse. Also, because those branches are going to die over time, making sure that you monitor those trees and prune them. Mulching could be another thing that you could do to kind of maybe promote the health of those trees. There are some antibiotic injections that can be done by arborists to combat bacterial leaf scorch. However, it's important to note that these don't cure the infection so much as ideally push it back some. They'll need to be repeated regularly, and they're not going to cure the problem. If you have a lot of bacterial leaf scorch in your area, it could be worth planting trees not known to be as susceptible in the future, maybe avoiding planting some of the really highly susceptible species like pin oaks and some of the red oaks if you're having problems with those same species. It's going to be really impossible to control the vectors that are moving that bacterium around. And if you've got a lot of it in your area, it's kind of something that you know is likely to occur. But anything you can do to promote the health of your trees is going to be a step in the right direction for their ability to defend themselves. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and see what questions you have. Again, if you suspect that you have bacterial leaf scorch, really the way to conclusively determine that is going to be with a lab test. And that's something that can be done at the Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab here at the University of Kentucky. And samples are submitted through county extension offices. This is something that is really, you can't conclusively tell without that. So, knowing what to do, you want to know what's causing it. So thanks for joining me today and learning a little bit more about bacterial leaf scorch. Hopefully you're not seeing this in your landscape, but if you are, or you see something else, make sure you reach out and I'll see what questions we have.
Great presentation, Ellen. Really do appreciate it. We do have a question of someone that uses leaf mulch on their garden. And so if it has that disease in it, is that going to spread anything?
No, I don't think it's going to spread anything in the leaf mulch. In fact, every winter that bacterium kind of gets knocked down to the roots and below ground. So even the parts of it that are infected above ground, like the petioles and the branches and the shoots in late summer, by the time we get to next spring, those are not going to have that bacterium detectable in that tissue. That's going to recolonize that tree each year from below ground. So I don't think your leaf litter is going to be a kind of a major concern for reinfecting that tree or anything else.
Yeah, I know a lot of people use leaves as leaf mulch, and it helps with gardening and that kind of stuff. So, is there any other bacterial leaf issue other than this one that it could cause a problem?
Well, there are some fungi and bacteria that can be in your leaves, and they, overwintering leaf litter could be a source of inoculum, aka spores or whatever, to inoculate next year's tissue. But I would say that really depends on what you're dealing with. In those cases, what people would recommend is sanitation, and sanitation pretty much means raking those leaves up and removing them so you don't have that nice source of new infectious material that's going to infect your new tissues. That applies for some things and not for others. So it really depends on kind of what you're dealing with. I also use leaf litter in my mulch and think it's great. But if I were, really facing some challenging issues with some of those fungal issues, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably bag it up and get rid of it. I see we've got a question about what's the best way to water a tree. I mentioned don't just give it a sprinkle with your hose. And I think that's one of the challenges with watering trees is that a lot of times when we think about watering plants in the landscape, we're thinking about turf. And what turf needs for watering is really different from what trees need. And you can actually kind of do more harm to a tree with a type of irrigation that might work great for something like turf. So in general, trees need, and this varies depending on what we're talking about, but let's say about an inch of rain a week, whether that comes from the sky or your hose. So by an inch of rain, I mean, if you had a rain gauge, you'd want it to be about an inch a week for your tree. So if it's not coming from the sky, you can help supplement that. And this is not something that you want to, briefly sprinkle on their trees. Roots are going to be expansive. They go a long distance around it And they also don't like to be wet typically. Some trees can tolerate wet soil better than others, but they don't want to be saturated. That's a great way to get root rot issues. So if you're watering, all the time, a lot, you can get a lot of decay issues that might be more counterproductive rather than beneficial. Instead, what I'd recommend is really deeply watering trees maybe once a week, and then kind of letting that be taken up by the tree, dry out a little bit before kind of watering again. Now, if this is a newly planted tree, brand new, you might need to up that a little bit, especially if we're in a dry period, just because it doesn't yet have that established root system set up. So what that could look like, there are lots of different ways to do this. You could, maybe the most low-tech approach would be taking your hose out there, turning it on a trickle, and then leaving it there for some time, and every maybe half an hour, moving it to a different spot around your tree, remembering that the tree's roots can extend out, but definitely trying to get under that canopy of the tree. So that's a very not high-tech approach and requires you to remember to go out there and move it around. So, know yourself. And they also make specialized soaker hoses that can kind of do the same thing, where you leave it on for a while at that slow trickle that's going to gently and thoroughly get water down there, but then you turn it off. I'm not leaving that on all the time or having it be something that happens every day. You can also see, especially for newly planted trees, these tree watering bags. What they're doing is that you'd fill up this watering bag with, I can't remember how many gallons are typically in it, but fill it up once a week, and that's going to gradually trickle down into that tree. Not all at once, because if you dumped all that water in all at once, the tree wouldn't be able to take it up, but it's also not going to hold it there for that whole time. That's another option that you could look at. I'm trying to balance what the tree needs. Imagine a rain, that's kind of what it's looking for, not a quick spritz with a hose. And I see we got another question. Are there any systemic antimicrobial therapies that can be employed to treat bacterial leaf scorch? There are some antibiotic treatments. I think I showed a picture with some different injections that people will typically inject a tree with antibiotics. Now, this is a bacterium, and those are antibiotics. So there are some challenges with that, just in terms of cost and potential risk there. But then the bigger challenge for us is that it doesn't last very long in the tree system. It's not going to provide that tree much protection. It's certainly not going to permanently eradicate the bacterial leaf scorch pathogen, that Xylella fastidiosa, in the tree, but it could provide a little bit of pushing it back, extending the life of the tree. So not to say that they are totally ineffective, but I will say most scientific studies that have looked at them have not found that they are terribly beneficial. It's something you could talk with an arborist about and see, but I do think that at best what you're looking at is maybe prolonging the life of your tree, not curing that infection. But always stay tuned, because maybe there'll be some new exciting development and way to treat that.
Oh, there's a new one that just came in.
Yeah, and I see some chat in the about different kind of watering setups, and it's a lot of water. I can see that for one-year-old
when you move it around, like if you left it an hour and you just keep on going, how long is it at a trickle is it?
Depends on how big your tree is, Renee. Totally depends, because bigger trees are going to need more water, but those little trees, especially newly planted trees, are going to need to be watered more frequently. Now, especially, and this might be super counterintuitive, if you planted a balled and burlapped tree, that is one where I'd say you need to be especially on that water. I mean, the bare root trees for sure, in their first couple of years, they don't have a lot going on. It's easy for those roots to dry out. But the balled and burlap trees can also kind of confuse you, because they seem bigger. You might get a 1-inch caliper tree that seems like it's going to be bigger. It's going to be more tolerant to some of that. but it has had most of its root system cut off in that process. It has a really impaired root system that really can't support the above ground tissue that you're seeing. And you're thinking, I got a beautiful tree, but the below ground part, it is going to take years to put on that root growth to support it. So in that interim time, it's especially important that it's being watered. And that could last a lot longer than it would for a tree that was planted as a bare root seedling. Billy, I see you shaking your head. Is there
No,
anything
I'm
you'd
just
like to
with you.
add to that?
You're giving good stuff. You really are. I appreciate it. Yeah. No, it's really all great. It is.
Yeah,
Got
there's
it.
been some work that, for every the bigger a tree is when you plant it, that's the more years it's going to take, not to put on new growth, but just to recoup the losses in its root system. So sometimes you can be better served planting those smaller trees that are going to grow faster and better in their environment because their root system is more developed than the bigger trees, which might look really nice on the onset, but have trouble dealing with those challenging conditions down the road because the root system is impacted by it. It really depends. It depends on the tree and what's going on with it. But something I think that a lot of folks are like, oh, it's big. It's going to be easier to take care of. And it's like, oh, maybe, but it might also have some problems.
No, good stuff, Dr. Crocker.
Great
Appreciate you
stuff.
very much. So I know I hate to ask you this question because I know it depends, but I think people may be dying to know. So if you've got a really healthy tree and it gets bacterial leaf scorch, right, in its first year, and it's really healthy, I mean, are we talking 5 years, 10 years, 2 years,
That's
or if
a great
yeah,
question, Billy. And I don't have an answer for you, but I do have a research project going on right now trying to better understand this because I think bacterial leaf scorch is being moved around all the time by these insects. But why do some trees get sick while others don't? You can have trees right next to each other, the same species, where one of them is going to die and the other is totally fine. And so, I think there's probably some variation between trees, but also there's definitely something going on in terms of tree health. And, how detrimental is this infection to trees? When does that flip get switched in terms of the tree can cope with this and the tree can't? But I guess to your point, if you've got a tree that's really looking really good and starts to get symptoms of it, yeah, it might be 10 years or more that things are going to decline little by little. So this is not something that's going to kill your tree this week or even this year or in the next few years, but something you can count on happening eventually. Once you know you have bacterial leaf scorch and you start to see those symptoms, it's going to get worse over time. So that's a great opportunity for you to plan, because while you can't maybe stop it, you can think about, what's my timeline for getting rid of this tree, planning financially for tree removal, because depending on the size of that tree, that can be a serious cost. And then replacement, what's going to go there? You could get a head start with that. What would you like to see on that landscape when that tree is gone?
and I guess ideally, if you're going back into an environment that killed it with bacterial leaf scorch, you want to probably put something that's not susceptible to that, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to
Well,
say, don't
maybe.
another oak.
I know there's so many
Maybe.
unknowns. I get, yeah, I
there
understand.
are there are a lot of unknowns, and I would say that's something to definitely consider. I'd also say though, and this is another thing that my lab is looking into, is that we know this is a super common issue in landscape trees across the state and region. It is really common in especially those susceptible red oak species, but we don't see it in our forest trees. And that to me makes me wonder, is it there and we just aren't noticing it? Or are those trees maybe growing better and they're going to be less susceptible to those issues? And so I think there's a lot of kind of questions in terms of what is it doing and where is it doing those things? So.
Okay, so
Well,
sorry, Renee, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I just appreciate that Dr. Crocker is on the scene
Yes.
and she's being the detective and trying to figure out what this is. So,
Well, it is really unsatisfying to have a disease that is so destructive and so common in our area that we really don't have a good treatment for. And so, hoping to better understand kind of what's going on with it. And from my perspective, does it pose a threat to our forest trees in the future? It's bad enough in our landscape trees, but we definitely don't want to see it in our forests.
All right, I'll echo Renee's. Thank you, Dr. Crocker. Even though I've got a million more questions and other thoughts, like, is it mycorrhizae there and not here or something? What's going on? It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Sounds like you need to be on her detective team.
Yeah,
Oh, she's
come
way
join the
smarter than
party.
I am. Yes, no,
I
you're
like
good.
it. No, I love it, Billy. And I have one other thing I wanted to share with the group if I can have just one more minute. And
Perfect.
that is a new conference. This is unrelated to bacterial leaf scorch, but in the forest health realm. We have the Kentucky Invasive Plant Conference is coming up again on November 12th. We don't have registration set up just yet, but it's coming really soon. But if you're interested in learning more about invasive plants and their management in the state, in getting pesticide applicators, CEUs, and networking with others that work in this field, please save the date and come join us at the Kentucky State Farm on November 12th.
That's awesome.
Good
Yep,
stuff.
definitely need that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, Dr. Crocker, thanks again for joining us. We love it every time you're on. Give us a lot of good information, helpful information for keeping our forests healthy.
Great to be on, and big thanks to Eric. I always enjoy seeing his beautiful photos and the cool flowers that he's finding.
Wonderful.
Good job. Excellent.
Thanks.
Yay.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Really appreciate Eric Comley being on talking about wildflowers, and then Dr. Crocker talking about leaf scorch. I mean, it seems like there's always something new popping up, but I'm glad that she's always on it to tell us what we need to do.
Yeah, we're lucky to have her for sure,
Yes,
as well
we
as
are.
Eric. Good program. Thank you all for being with us. If
Mhm.
you would like to see something on a future episode, let us know. We have a little survey link on fromthewoodstoday.com. You can check that out. Let us know. Maybe you've seen something in your woods that you're curious about. Take a picture, upload it. We might
Right.
feature it on a future episode.
Done it before, we'll do it again. So again, and if anything that you're like, "Ooh, what did they say?" Or I want to know that pretty red flower he was talking about, what was the name of that? You can find that in about a week on fromthewoodstoday.com, and we have all of our shows that we've ever done posted there.
Good stuff. All right, folks, we appreciate y'all very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday at 11.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
From the woods today. From the woods today.